Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been re-elected as the chairman of ECOWAS, where we look forward to seeing stronger ties concerning the issue of being financially stable, as well as other things that concern other nations that are part of the ECOWAS. I am Sarah Elisha Dashop. The program is the Dailies, where we keep you up to date some of the happenings from the front page of the newspaper. I will be doing this together with Rachel Tansy. Good morning.
Morning, Sarah.
Morning. All right. Remember, you can be part of the conversation. Drop your opinion, your comments, your views on any of the story that is of interest to you. And we will move straight into the papers, starting with First News newspaper.
On First News newspaper, Bishop David Oyedepo is saying, I never cornered church money to my side. Even at 82, I still flee from sexual temptation. Still, Bishop David Oyedepo is saying the same thing. Federal government reassures safety of Warri Tapa train service as operations resume. Lagos cracked down on traffic violations, impound 9,370 vehicles. Bayelsa Governor Diri visits Dangote refinery in Lagos. The big story on the paper, court demands answers. Ex-Minister Umar Farouk faces scrutiny over 729 billion naira of spending. Tinubu re-elected ECOWAS chairman, urges stronger financial
Like track and field list, that's on sport. You can find detail in the paper. And the big news on the paper, economic benefit of Samoa agreement huge. Economic benefit of Samoa agreement huge. This is a report that say the terms will standardize Nigeria's agro produce for export and others. Federal government multi legal action against Daily Trust over the reports. More detail can be found in the paper. Withheld salary, SANU NASU begin protest July 9th, that is tomorrow, following some of their withheld salaries and other issues. More detail found in the paper. Tinubu gets fresh tenure as ECOWAS chairman, makes security, reconciliation, development top priorities. And on flooding, NEMA activities operational offices to support states. Also, we have CAC extend deadline for POS to register their business. And on banditry, rep sponsor mass wedding of 105 Zamfara orphan girls. More detail found on page 13, and that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
On Vanguard newspaper, the big story, brewing industry choking over high cost of raw materials. The writer says expenses rise 113% to 188 billion naira. Importation alternatives stifled by high exchange rate. Top brewers borrow 812 billion naira to survive. Loan repayment cost rises 191%. Losses escalate by 1,034%. On insecurity, Tinubu tax ECOWAS member states on financial commitments. There's a Monday interview on page 15. MKO 26 years after why this nonsense must stop by Abiola, his words on marble. You can find details inside the paper. Why CBN insists on another recapitalization coming from the governor of the bank, Cardoso. More details can be found on page 5. OPay provides the same 5 million naira deposit insurance coverage as other commercial. This is an advertorial. You can find details on page 44. And court orders ex-minister to account for 729 billion naira on kidnapped journalist police come forest as NUJ demands release. More details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Vanguard newspaper.
On leadership newspaper, ECOWAS must fund regional security to tackle terrorism coming from Tinubu. Court orders ex-minister Umar Farouk to account for the 729 billion naira. We hope that she'll be able to do that. We still have the issue. We remember she was the humanitarian affairs minister as well as others. So quite a number of scrutiny is going on. More detail found on page 9. And on fact check, what did Edo APC say about PDP governorship candidate? What did Edo APC say about PDP governorship candidate? And trending, police seek end to withdrawal of rape cases. More detail found on page 2. Bandits kidnap ex-NLC president, 2 journalists and families in Kaduna State. More detail found on page 14. And on racketeering, air passengers lament as thought take over ticketing, where we can see that ticketing, thought have taken over ticketing at the national airport. And then on stakeholders, aviation stakeholders also blame forex crisis, Dana air suspension. And passengers are stranded at the airport as flight delays and cancellation linger. And also on fare hike, we're seeing that 1 hour flight from Lagos to Abuja now costs between 200,000 to 250,000. So all of that can be found on page 4. 1,446 after Hajara governors and others preach peace and love. Wike plans relocation of Apple Mechanic Village. More detail on page 16. 30 trillion naira Ways and Means report ready in September coming from Senate. Lifeless body of the UNN student found in drainage. More detail on page 6. And that's all on leadership newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, 4 months with health salary. NASU family member auction. Details can be found on page 26. Tinubu re-elected ECOWAS chairman appeals to member states on finance. The writer says ECOWAS may suspend funded projects in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Details can be found on page 25. The big story, how insurgency, banditry worsen food prices. The writer says bandits chase away farmers, impose tax in Kaduna. Cattle rustling rampant, farmers abandon lands in Plateau, Niger, Benue, and Sokoto. Cultivation of rice, beans, onions, millet, watermelon, tomatoes, guinea corn mostly affected in Plateau, Benue, and others. We will take decisive steps against destructive herdsmen, a statement from Ekiti governor. What security forces are doing, a report from the police. You can find details on page 3. $1 trillion economy analysts warn against asset liability risks. CJN to swear in 12 as FCT High Court judges to July 10. Details can be found on page 28. On student loan, we've received data from only state-owned tertiary institutions. More details can be found on page 25, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Guardian newspaper, revenue expenditure mismatch. States may sack 600,000 employees to implement minimum wage, where we're seeing the year total IGR of states from 2018 down to 2023. Now we're seeing as of 2018, it was about 1.1 trillion naira, which is the IGR. And then as of last year, the total 2023 total state personnel cost was about 1.94 trillion naira. Now we're looking at states with the highest personnel cost to revenue ratio. We're seeing that Kano is the highest when you're looking at the state with the highest personnel cost, and then we're looking at state with the lowest personnel cost to revenue ratio, that is from Akwa Ibom State. So looking at the highest and the lowest, and then what all of the concern concerning the increase of minimum wage, where we are seeing that Labour have refused to shift ground concerning the new minimum wage, which they are insisting that 250,000 is the money, and they are not receiving 62,000 naira from the federal government. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we are seeing that NDLEA arrests couple, recovers 2.1 billion naira worth of drugs in Lagos raid. More detail found on page 9. And we've seen that Tinubu begins a new mandate tax to return breakaway states. This is concerning ECOWAS. And on student loan, 115 state-owned institutions yet to submit enrollees data. ICPC intercept 10 billion naira of COVID-19 fund in MDA account, 100 million naira in personal accounts. More detail as well in the paper. And we have NLC in season 250,000 naira vows to reject federal government's 62,000 naira minimum wage. Petrol scarcity lingers in Abuja, queues resurface in states, and we see concern as socio-economic pressure among youth. Concern as social economic pressure heightens suicide missions among youths. More detail can be found on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On this day newspaper, the big story: after re-emerging ECOWAS chair, Tinubu charges members to meet fiscal contract, says Nigeria will lead by example, fulfill its financial commitment, offer nations counter-terrorism center for use by entire region, canvasses unity innovation to boost regional economy. Abiodun congratulates president on re-election. You can see more details of the story on page 5. S&P Dangote refinery capable of solving Nigeria's FX problems, catalyzing economic development. Refinery managers reaffirm plans to commence petrol production this July. You can find more details on page 6. Access Holding commences 351 billion naira rights issue subscriptions. TCN says grid fully restored after nationwide blackout, blames tripping of generator. You can start with the details on the front page. We have a picture story where we can see the ECOWAS summit, President Bola Tinubu and other presidents of the member states. And that's all the news on this day newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, the Nation blueprint reporters families kidnapped in Kaduna. 7 to 8-year-old ex-Labour leader abducted as well. All of these happen in Kaduna State, and we hope that the government of Kaduna will really do something to intensify security of journalists and other people as well, because the number of abduction going on in that state is becoming, outrageous, and we hope that the government of that state will wake up and do their responsibility of protecting lives and properties. Still on the Nation newspaper, EFCC asks Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria to watch this battle. More detail of that found on page 5. NetFund opens portal for state-owned varsity students. More detail found on the paper. And ECOWAS re-elect Tinubu mobilizes for standby force when we are having other talks that are going on concerning Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and also for talking about Union of Sahel. So more detail of all of those talks you can find in the paper. 4 banks open bid to raise 1 trillion naira for capital markets. CBN project resilience financial institution. World 2004 coalition drive by Sododu. More detail of that can be found on page 4. 3,000 fake graduates face persecution. Probe of degree racketeering in foreign varsity completed. More detail of that can be found on page 5. New UK Prime Minister terminate deportation of migrants to Rwanda policy. More detail can be found on page 46. And we have few picture story. One we can see concerning the ECOWAS, where we can see the president downside. We're seeing the IGP of police. You can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is appealing to you.
On Daily Sun newspaper, the big story: mass protest in universities. Unions begin demonstration over unpaid salaries. Students of federal, state, tertiary institution can apply for loan now. Coming from NELFund, details can be found on page 6. Fulfill financial obligation to combat terrorism, Tinubu urges ECOWAS members. Forex inflows into NAFEM rises to $1.45 billion. Pound sterling surges past US dollar. Euro hits 1,925 to a pound. You can find details on page 21. Court orders Buhari ministers to account for 729 billion naira. Hijra 1446, JNI NSGF hail Muslims on New Islamic Year. Councils of Imams reaffirm support to Sultan. Details can be found on page 28. NDLE in naps Oshun Monarch, Chadian Youth Corps member for drug trafficking. Details can be found on page 5. Fair in Kaduna as gunmen abduct ex-NLC president, journalists, and families. Atiku NUJ urges security agents to ensure quick rescue. More details can be found on page 6. Jonathan Apabio Clark governors to attend Niger Delta Stakeholders Summit. More details can be found on page 27. We have a picture story where we can see Vice President Kashim Shettima presenting Distinguished Award for Infrastructural Development to Governor Peter Mba of Enugu State on behalf of President Bola Tinubu during the 2024 Nigeria Excellence Award in Public Service at the ASU Presidential Villa this weekend. Also from left to right, we can see the former Deputy Speaker, House of Representatives, Babangida, and we can see Austin Opara, ex-speaker. We can see Yakubu Dogara, former president of the Senate. We can see Ayim Pius Ayim. We can see Ken Inamani, president of the Senate. We can see Godswill Apabio. We can see former speaker Aminu Masari and others. This happened during visit to Apabio in Abuja yesterday, and that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, court orders former humanitarian minister to account for 729 billion naira. More detail can be found on page 4. SEC grant Access Holding PLC approval for 351 billion naira right issue. NetFund approves student loan access for 36 state-owned tertiary institutions. Again, SANU NASU direct members to embark on protest strike over 4 months withheld salaries. Nigerians' FX reserve increases to $34.7 billion, detail found on page 7. The big news, Tinubu re-elected ECOWAS chairman urges leaders to pay your bills to tackle insecurity. Says West Africa bloc must leverage Nigerians' expertise to combat terrorism. Commission President caution against geostrategic rivalries. More detail found on page 5. We have few picture stories on the front page of the paper. You can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story. That's all on Nigerian News Direct.
On the Daily Times, the big story, ECOWAS 65th session. Tinubu calls for commitment funding towards regional standby force, says ECOWAS needs security stability to achieve potential. Re-elected ECOWAS chairman for the second time. More details can be found on page 4. NASU SANU to begin nationwide protests on Tuesday. You can start with the details on the front page. How to end Rivers crisis coming from Okupe, says crisis caused by disregard for rules and laws. Court orders Buhari's minister to account for 729 billion naira payment to poor Nigerians. NDLEA arrests couple recovers 2.1 billion naira drug worth in Lagos. Federal government addressing incidents of rail derailment. This is coming from Alkali. Details can be found on page 29. CJN to inaugurate daughter-in-law Wike's daughter as new judges of FCT High Court. More details can be found on page 8. We have a picture story where we can see the 1st Brigade Nigerian Army marks the 151st anniversary of the Nigerian Army establishment with orphans and less privileged children, pupils, and students in Zamfara to commemorate the Nigerian Army Day celebration 2024. That's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On Daily News Herb newspaper, coming from Edo Gubar, APC hiding looming defeat behind court judgment coming from Osasuye, detail found in the paper. Rampaging bandits, gunmen in kidnapping spree in Kaduna and Delta State. Abduct 2 journalists, wife, children, ex-NLC president in Kaduna State. Kidnap Juju priestess, 11 devotees in Delta. And we have NJC condemns abduction of the Nation Blueprint correspondent and family members seek immediate rescue of victims. We are ransacking forests and bushes. We will ensure victims' safe return coming from the police. And this is taking some of our papers, Rachel. And this is more like a way of me asking the government of the state, what are they doing? It breaks my heart each time I see, and I believe it breaks the heart of every other Nigerian as well, because you begin to wonder certain people which you felt initially they are untouchable, certain people which you felt, I mean, this should be a no-go area, but we are seeing that the number of attacks and kidnapping is really, really taking shape in Kaduna. We wonder what is really happening. Initially, we said that it was all about kidnapping of students, but right now we're seeing that these people are beginning to lead to, will I say, now hitting the arrow straight to directing families and all of that. And I'm wondering what is really happening. I mean, we've seen that on social media, the family where, if I think it was a judge or so in Kaduna, that his wife and kids were kidnapped, but then the wife has been released, and then they killed the first son, and then with the three sons are still, and I think yesterday or so was the last day given by the bandits to actually, I think they were to bring about 300, but they reduced it to 150. So you begin to ask questions, what really do these bandits want? And we're saying that it's not just in Kaduna, according to the paper, even Delta State as well. And then we have that even in Plateau State and many other states as well. Just that these stories don't all make it to the paper eventually. So this is a question. I'm happy that our president has been re-elected, Rachel, as the chairman for ECOWA. But this actually tells that he has more work on his table to actually handle. I know he can't be everywhere at all times, but this is where he should call all his governors to do what they need to do to make sure that their states are safe. We're seeing that as a result of all of this kidnapping and all the rest, farmlands have been abandoned, and this is affecting even food production in some of the states. So this is more like a wake-up call to our governors, our security agency. Please do something. Yes, we are excited. They are going around checking all the forests, combing it to be sure that nothing's happening. But beyond that, can we look forward to preventing all of these things from happening totally? We're tired of corrective measure. Right now, imagine the son that is dead. You can't bring back that boy back to life. So I'm wondering, and I'm really asking the governors of the state to please wake up and do something, so that citizens and indigents can be free to walk around and do their daily business as usual.
This is a proof to every Nigerian that nobody is safe. I remember saying that there's no place that is safe in Nigeria. I just haven't gotten to you. That's just literally the situation we find ourselves. Just because you have not been kidnapped in your area doesn't mean you are safe, or nobody has been kidnapped in your area doesn't mean you are safe. Insurgency just haven't gotten to where you are, in my opinion. And this is the proof of it every single day on our papers. Just as you said, Celia, it looked like the most vulnerable were students, you know, in schools, hostels, and all of that. Now, what more can we say about the people that look less vulnerable still getting kidnapped? It means I can be kidnapped, God forbid it, but this is what it means, because we are looking at journalists here, we are looking at a former labor chairman, we are looking at prestigious people being killed in their home. We saw that of the general and all of that. It could have been an abduction case, it's a murder case, he was killed and all of that. It could be anything, Sele. When it comes to insecurity, it's ripple, and then it will spread gradually till it gets to where it wants to, unless, as you said, we don't need corrective measures. It's always preventive. It needs to be stopped even before it happens. And this is where we keep seeing that the government of the day is failing us, starting from the federal government down to the state level. And then you might want to ask, what can these people do about it? What can our governors do about it? What can the federal government do about it? And we have said that so many times, because there's little or nothing you and I can do. People are being attacked and kidnapped in broad daylight. It's not about go home early. There are people who go home late and get home safely, and there are people who try to find their way very early in a very safe hour of the day. and they still get kidnapped. It's not about that. It's about making our streets safe. It's about waking up. I see some states moving for state police. Sele, in the end, is more about increasing the work that our security forces do at every level, at the state level and at the federal level. As we'll keep saying, Sele, there's no how we can say there's too much funding to security. There's no such thing as too much funding. And then we can, point fingers at President Bola Tinubu and say, can he really live by example when he tags the other heads of state, presidents, and leaders of the member state of ECOWAS, talking about fiscal policies and all of that? So far, the ones you have put in place with the monetary policies, Nigerians are feeling a hard blow so far. You are refusing to go back on certain things, even despite seeing what is happening in some African countries and how the government have listened to its people. Can we talk about security? Not to say that coup is a welcome thing or military administrations are welcome, but you need to see the chair going on in some of these states that have been taken back by the military. We can't sit down here and say military, we don't want that. It's not acceptable. But there is a certain confidence that the people who have gained back in this state that are refusing to join ECOWAS. We can talk about Niger, we can talk about Mali, we can talk about Burkina Faso. The word out there is different concerning what the people are saying about what is happening in the country as it is now. And then I just hope that eventually the juntas there will be able to, restore it, fix what can be fixed, and then return it back to a civil system of government, because that is the hope eventually. I just hope that we have a government that is willing to make repairs, because there's a lot that is damaged in this country. And when you say you're taking something as emergency, you need to treat it as an emergency. And so far, so good. It's just word, but the action doesn't match it. We see them talking about state of emergency on education, on food, on everything. We can see that scarcity and hyper as a result of insecurity. That is why what is made on our soil is that expensive. And then we just need to see the real action being taking place. Why do we have farmers paying tax to herdsmen, and the government is aware of that, because these farmers are lamenting? It's on our papers, it's on our news. Why is it lingering? This didn't start today. It started more than 3 years back, if we will count. And why have the government done nothing in particular for these farmers that are facing this kind of thing? And we can't just help but wonder, are these insurgents higher and better than the government in Nigeria? I would say no. I just believe that the government is not ready to put in 100 and above percent when it comes to actually tackling insecurity in the country. Of
course, and we can say they are working, but then maybe they are channeling their energy to the wrong place.
Obviously.
Maybe that is what is actually happening, because if they are channeling their energy to the right place, we're supposed to be able to see some, very good results, but that has not been it. I just feel very sad for those people in the dens of these bandits, and I hope that the government of the day will please wake up and do something to restore them back to their families. Still on Daily News Hub newspaper, we have Pedika Valley CEO visit family of late Ogun journalist Wale Adewumi, places the widow on a monthly stipend, and then to pick their medical bills, state resolve to offer varsity election. Okay, I take that to pick their medical bill, state resolve to offer varsity education. More detail can be found in the paper. Also, we have Atiku, Ozibanjo, El-Rufai and others should rescue Nigeria from Tinubu, coming from the ex-APC vice chairman. CNG to swear in daughter-in-law, Wike daughter, 10 others as High Court judges. Court orders Buhari Minister Umar Farouk to account for the 729 billion naira payment claimed to have been made to poor Nigerians, especially remember during the COVID-19, the school feeding. Till date, they are still probing that. And you know, I wonder why we had to wait for her to step down from office before probing these. We're talking about 2020 COVID fund, Rachel. I was suspecting that by 2021, 2022,
Questions should be
we
asked.
should, of course,
Yeah.
questions shall be asked. Auditing should have been done. But I wonder why we wait until the minister. You remember that of the Prime Minister of Obasanjo's time?
Yes.
It was so. You wonder why do we have to wait this long to probe certain things? I just hope that the funds will be restored back to the government coffers, because that is what we need. We need our funds back. I think that is it. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and see how far the court can do concerning that. Still on Daily News Hub, we have Net Fund releases the full list of state-owned higher institution cleared for student loan. Only Peter Obi can save Nigeria, Labour Party is boasting about that. And on boiling point, Nigerians' debt burden, Commerson economy takes center stage as Adiaye, and then we have point way out of it talking about our debt profile. And we have ECOWAS leaders re-elect Tinubu chairman. Nigeria's FX reserve rises to $34.7 billion. More detail found in the paper. And that's all on Daily News Hub. But before we continue further with other paper review, we'd love to take a time out. Let's hear what your views are concerning the kidnapping going on in some states in the country, as well as our president has been re-elected as the chairman of ECOWAS. This calls for a lot of work on his own hands and making sure his country and other countries as well are working towards, being secured, and then bringing back other nations that have been taken over by the military junta back to civil way of, government. So quite a number of stories on the paper. When we come back, we will continue with the paper review. Please stay tuned with us.
Hello viewers, my name is Amaka Ocheke. We anchor the program, The Living Room, right here on Equa TV International.
You are welcome to watch us every Monday.
The Living Room is a very interesting family program where we discuss everything you want to know about family.
Talk about our children's mental health.
Keep watching. Our program is always here, 5:30 every Monday. We want you to ask questions, we want you to phone in and drop topics that you want us to talk about, even on our media handle on Facebook. We're there. So keep watching, keep listening. The Living Room.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Thank you for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies. We have quite a number of stories on the paper where we're seeing that Sanu and NASA will be staging a protest tomorrow regarding their 4 months salary arrears that have not been paid, as well as we're seeing NLC insisting that 250,000 is what they are going to take as the minimum wage, and they will not accept the 62,000 naira that the federal government is going to offer, where we are seeing governors actually complaining the implication of that about 600,000 people might lose their job or will lose their job if that is going to be the new minimum wage. So quite a number of debate and conversation around that. We're seeing personnel costs from some states that are having higher and other states that are having lower. So quite a number of things on the paper. We would love to hear your own inputs, your own opinions about all of these and more the stories that we have actually looked at on the paper. I still have Rachel with me. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, let's continue with the paper review, looking at the New Telegraph newspaper.
The big story on the paper: works towards creating regional standby force, Tinubu tells ECOWAS leaders as he was re-elected chairman. Senegalese president leads mediation with Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali. Expert fingers Al-Qaeda in Gwoza multiple suicide attacks. Details can be found on page 2, 4 and 7. On CIT, revenue from banks other rises by 91.1% to 531.26 billion naira. You can start with the details on the front page. Federal government exempts Gencos discussed from withholding tax payment. More details can be found on page 8. Court orders Buhari's minister to account for 729 billion naira payment to poor Nigerians. NDLEA smashes cocaine syndicate, arrests couple, recovers 2.1 billion naira drug in Lagos. 2023 budget extension. We have concurrent running of 2 budgets will fuel corruption coming from lawyers. You can find details inside the paper. On IPOP, don't worsen Nnamdi Kanu's problem, Obidigbo tells Igbo politicians. More details can be found on page 7. SSANU NASU on to hold state and national protest ahead strike. While National Grid collapsed again by TCN, you can find details to why on page 8. 30 trillion naira ways and means Senate extends probe period by 2 months. Bandits kidnap nation blueprints journalists, wives, children in Kaduna. You can find details of this story on page 2, 4, 25 and 27. Nigeria over-reliance on oil exports bunkering retarding economic growth. This is coming from CUPP. More details can be found on page 6. We have a study that says reducing processed meat consumption has significant health benefits. More details can be found on page 27. That's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, new capital base insufficient amid Naira depreciation coming from Soludo. You can start reading on the front page and continue on page 3. Olise Dom's EPL joins Bayel from Padders on 5-year deal. For those who have been following the sport, do well to read that on page 16. And flood alert, NIME predicts heavy rainfall from Monday, that is today. NEMA activates emergency centers, so just in case you've been affected, there are centers that have been set by NEMA. So we just hope that by NEMA actually, so we hope that we'll not have more casualties that are expected. Start making sacrifices for Nigerians. Learn from Kenya experience coming from Obi and Rachel. Looking at these, I remember during the weekend I was looking that the president of Kenya had a meeting. More like an online meeting where he was asking for solution on what to do concerning, and then a number of people, some people were, bringing out fire on the fact that certain policies that he made. We remember the issue of the tax was what led to the protest, and a number of people were commenting, and then people were like, we need to take over our country. And here, looking at what Peter will be saying, that making sacrifices, and you just can't help but wonder, are our leaders really willing to make that sacrifice for Nigeria? Rachel, we've had people saying that we need restructuring in Nigeria. We've had Obasanjo and others saying that maybe democracy is not for us. We should look for a system of government that will help us. We've seen where I think the House of Rep were looking at going back to parliamentary system of government so that we can cut down corruption and all of that. But beyond all of this, we're talking about making a sacrifice for the betterment of Nigeria. And where we were on break, you were raising a concern concerning the fact that over 600,000 Nigerians might lose their job. Why? Because NLC minimum 250,000. What sacrifice are our leaders willing to make? That is, if they even want to make a sacrifice. We're looking at the same leaders that are saying Nigerians should use bicycle because of the roads. And then we're looking at the same leaders that are willing to buy SUV, bulletproof cars. That is to say, they know that Nigeria is not safe. That is why they're going for bulletproof cars. If not, you could use a normal car.
Yes.
So quite a number of things. When you look at things that are happening, just like you say, we need leaders that can match their words with their action. Not saying one thing and acting in another way. So quite a number of things when you want to compare Kenya's situation and that of Nigeria presently.
Mr. Le, is a Nigerian newspaper review, but this happened to cross, and we can't just help but talk because I was able to listen to another interview by Ruto, the Kenyan president, and then he clearly stated the things that they would not be able to do because now the people have rejected these tax reforms that he is bringing in, and therefore it means they will not be able to pay farmers certain money that they wanted to boost certain production. They also have a backlog, I think a deficit for coffee, which we know Kenya is one of the top producing coffee yes, in Africa and all of that. He talked about how they will not be able to boost that sector if they're not able to get the money he thought they would be able to generate from these tax reforms. And then he mentioned a lot of things, most of which was get through the farmers' production and industrialization specifically, and he was able to list them out specifically, telling the people that now it means we will not be able to do this, do that, do this, and do this. I believe that Nigerians, we deserve some amount of accountability from our leaders. We've talked about that so many times, where transparency feels like nobody deserves it. But these are taxpayers' money. We talk about that all the time. I am playing my part, paying tax. I have given you the support of voting you as the president, and at the same time giving you my tax to do your work with, and then you think and you sit down and you feel that these taxpayers don't deserve for you to account how you spend the money, the revenue that has been generated, that is not your own, that is for you to do work and good towards them and all of that. Until we get to that point, I believe we're still where we are yesterday. Until we get to the point that our leaders believe and actually see that they are answerable to Nigerians, until they see the fact that they need to be transparent, that we need to know what is going on. Are we paying subsidy or not? Can you fight Boko Haram or not? If you cannot, why are you not getting help? What really is the problem? Because we are not finding it easy. Can you fix the refineries or not? Because why would you take our subsidy and then we are not being able to refine our oil and all of that? What are you doing about our currency? Can you fix it or not? What are the implications of the decisions you have taken? When you put in fiscal and monetary policies, Nigerians deserve to know, how long will it take? How long are we going to bear this hardship? Is 1 year gone and nothing has changed regarding the strength of our currency? Nothing has changed regarding the price, the fuel pump price of petrol. Nothing has changed. You have traveled, you have gone to India, you have gone to Paris, you are winning investors. We have not seen one of them, yet we are having the ones that were managing, folding and going. We need to start seeing results. 1 year might not be enough, but it's good enough for us to start seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and we are not seeing that presently. So these are questions that I believe Nigerians need answers. Whether you think we deserve it or not, it is our right, because we are doing our duties as citizens. It is our right to demand certain things from you, and then you should give it to us.
Honestly, because I think personally it's very selfish of our leaders to keep asking the citizens to sacrifice when they are not ready to make the sacrifice. Just like you said, we are paying tax, so we demand accountability. We need to ask you questions and you give us the right answer. What are you doing with certain things? We're seeing Gates asking the question that the savings from first subsidy is supposed to use to better the lives of Nigeria. But what is happening? Rachel, we even want to know, how much have we saved from first subsidy? Let's start from there. But we're yet to get answers. No wonder how many years down the line we are trying to probe Umar Farouk of Humanitarian Affairs how many years ago. She was there as a minister for how long, and we're just doing that now. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and see how things turn out to be. Still on Metrics newspaper, academic activities threaten as SANU NASU set for nationwide strike. Academic activities threatened as SANU NASU set for nationwide strike, detailed on page 3. ECOWAS chairmanship, President Tinubu re-elected, vows to build democratic values in West Africa, appoints special envoys to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic, emphasizes expertise of a standby force to tackle terrorism, More detail on page 2. Federal government exempt discos, gencos, others from withholding tax. Gunmen abduct 2 Nigerian journalists and family members. Only 57% of Nigerians' rights demand can be satisfied locally, coming for Afan. So you need to ask the question, what really is happening? More detail can be found on page 11. Before the year end, I want to settle down, coming from Ruth Eze, and that's from Entertainment. You can do well to get the paper, read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Independent, federal government lists 36 state-owned institutions qualified for student loans. Court orders ex-minister to account for 729 billion naira poverty alleviation fund. You can start with the details on the front page. SSANU NASU commences protest tomorrow ahead of national strike. Aviation security experts disagree over empowering AVSEC to bear arms. More details can be found on page 6. Tinubu re-elected ECOWAS chairman seeks funding for standby force. Again, Atiku raises the alarm over escalating security insecurity. You can find details on page 7. Atiku Obi Kwankwaso asks to unite rescue Nigeria from APC. This is ahead of 2024 general election. You can find details on page 6. NDLEA smashes cocaine syndicate. NAPS couple recovered 2.1 billion naira drug. Why tomato prices are on fire, farmers and stakeholders. Federal government should open borders, subsidize fertilizers, coming from NBF and Northern Youths. Yoruba elders reject agitation for Yoruba nation. Details can be found on page 7. Still a picture story showing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the ECOWAS meeting. And that's all the news on Daily Independent.
On Voice of Liberty, Tinubu re-elected as ECOWAS chairman on 2027. Atiku Obi Kwankwaso alliance only way to defeat Tinubu, coming from Lukman and Kaduna. Panic as bandit kidnapped 2 journalists, family members, and 70-year-old ex-NLC president. Also, we see 18 states on red alert as flood killed 15, displaces over 16,000 in 1 week. The Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation, Joseph Tarum, have raised the alarm that 18 states and the Federal Capital Territory may be adversely affected in the coming years, so you can do well to find more detail of that. Federal government secure $5 billion Afrexim Bank fund to boost economy. Court orders ex-minister Sadia Umar Farouk to account for 729 billion naira payment to poor Nigerians. And on economic crisis, huge job losses as 16 multinational exit Nigeria in 3 years. And on fuel scarcity, oil marketers give reasons as filling station adjust pumps to the new price. So that is to say that the reason why we are having the queues resurfacing is because there is going to be a new price. So you can do well to get the paper and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you. But I think that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, Philip.
And also thank you to our viewers. Thank you to the crew member and every other person who made the program a success. We look forward again to doing this tomorrow. Please do have a lovely day ahead.